What's up, everyone? I just got out of my Quantumania showing, and man, what a way to introduce Kang into the MCU. Now, before I go too deep into the movie, I want to give a brief spoiler-free review on the movie in case you haven't seen it and are looking for reviews beforehand, so let's get into it. I'll start that by saying I think they did a really good job of balancing both that iconic Ant-Man vibe, with the family, comedy, and joy, but also knew when and where they needed to flip the switch and get real, and without saying too much, you'll see that a lot when Kang is on the screen, which is what I think a lot of Marvel fans had hoped for with this movie, and I can think of probably two scenes overall that felt like the tones didn't blend well together, or that one of the tones shouldn't have been there at all. I'll get into that in the spoiler section of this video. A lot of the reviews that came out last week from the early screenings were very accurate on the feel. When you enter the quantum realm, it picks up that vibe that is very similar to Star Wars and kind of exploring the galaxy there, as in here you're exploring the quantum realm. It gets real weird down there, but that's not a bad thing because it's like a comic book weirdness that the MCU has been needing, and on top of that, the realm is visually stunning more often than not, with many eccentric quantum beings down there to admire. Finally, I'll wrap up this section by saying I'd give this movie about a 7.5 out of 10. It picks up on that weirdness of Multiverse of Madness, but with the quantum realm again instead of the multiverse. The standout performances for me in order were Jonathan Majors, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Paul Rudd. Catherine Newton and William Jackson give solid performances, but didn't jump off the screen like the other three did, and then Evangeline Lilly along with Michael Douglas are solid when they're on screen, but didn't seem to have enough time to shine because of the focus on Rudd and Pfeiffer's Scott Lang and Janet Van Dyne. Now, after this quick break, I'm going to be getting into the spoiler section for the film, so if you haven't seen it yet and you wish to avoid them at all costs, I thank you for sticking with me up to this point and hope that you come back to this video once you've seen the movie. Make sure you leave a like and a sub on your way out if you haven't already, and once again, thank you for watching up to this point. Welcome to the full spoiler section of this breakdown. I'm going to start where I think everybody wants to. Kang. Jonathan Majors absolutely brought it for this role, giving a moving performance to allude to some of Nathaniel Richards' backstory, but also being able to turn face and become Kang the Conqueror. As we know from the post-credit scenes, which I'll go over towards the end of the video, he is not done as Kang, and he will be back with many more faces, as we've now seen the Conqueror and He Who Remains. There are still many more to come, though, don't you worry. For those comic book readers out there, I'm going to assume you know the popular 90s Avengers Forever comic run, but for those who don't, I'll break it down real quick. You have two Kangs, the Conqueror and Immortus, working against each other because of Rick Jones, who possesses the Destiny Force. Immortus is sending space phantoms to stop the team of Avengers that the Conqueror forms from different eras to protect Rick. But anyway, to get to the point, I think that part of this movie and the way they handled Kang was to get you used to the idea that even though he's a time-traveling menace, he is willing to work with the good guys, often putting on a poker face to ensure he gets his way. I think Peyton Reed and the VFX team did a wonderful job showcasing a rather odd power set from Kang with his manipulation of time, but also getting creative with how he used his futuristic technology. Kang was easily my favorite part of this movie, and I think that's the way it was meant to be. And I know, it's not the Kang movie, it's the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. But I think they developed Kang as a character through both Scott Lang and Janet Van Dyne because he has a very interesting upper hand on the other big bads of Marvel, especially considering that post-Blip, the MCU is all about how the characters in the universe missed 5 years of their lives, 5 years with their loved ones, and that's something that Kang can give back to them, as we see in the movie. I'm very interested to see who he uses this on to try and draw to his cause during phases 5 and 6. Sticking with villains, let's talk about MODOK. I think it was actually a good move using Darren Cross as MODOK for the MCU, and that's for a couple reasons. First of them being, I'm a strong believer that MODOK is just not a character that should have been adapted to live action. And I don't say that because I think he looked bad. I actually enjoyed what they did with the character because he looked goofy as could be, and in my mind, that's what it's supposed to be. But it's sort of like instead of making Arnim Zola into a mobile computer, for lack of a better term, they made him simply a computer in Winter Soldier. Some things just aren't meant for live action. However, the look was not my issue with MODOK. It was really only the way he died, and this is an issue I've run into a lot recently with Star Wars. where it seems to be every villain is going to get some sort of a redemption arc. And I think even if they want to do this, there's a much more compelling way to redeem MODOK than from Cassie's speech. For example, you could have simply had MODOK see that KANG is powering up to leave without him, and that sends him into a fury to take him down. So he's not teaming up with the Ant family as a good guy, but rather the two sides are with a common enemy trying to take him down. I found his redemption to be incredibly corny and unnatural, but it didn't ruin the character for me, as his action sequences were enough to maintain a decent, not a great, but a decent character in the MCU's version of MODOK. Next, we'll get into the Ant fam. As I said earlier, I think Paul Rudd and Michelle Pfeiffer shine in these scenes as they're the ones conveying Kang's story through their own experiences. However, Catherine Newton, Michael Douglas, and Evangeline Lilly all get their moments. From Hank's bickering with Krylar to Cassie getting her orange slice scene. But they weren't the ones that stood out to me for a reason, because both Michael Douglas and Evangeline Lilly's performances came off stale at certain points of the movie, and Cassie spent so much time just being a prisoner in the background that it didn't really feel like Catherine had a chance to shine in this new role. I think both Hope and Cassie's best scenes were moments with Scott, and I'm not talking about the giant one for Cassie. I'm talking about Cassie's as Scott is going to retrieve Kang's device, and Hope's in the end of the movie after they defeat, but if you ask me, really just delay Kang the Conqueror. With those three out of the way, though, I want to acknowledge that I think this was Paul Rudd's best performance yet in the MCU. He was able to bring that fun that we know him for, but like he said in those interviews, when he sees Kang, it's a whole new Scott Lang we're seeing. All that matters is keeping the ones he loves safe, and he's terrified he's not going to be able to do that. Which is then mirrored in Janet Van Dyne, as she's already past that point, suffering down in the quantum realm, knowing she let her daughter down. And this is of course before she's pulled out in the second entry of the trilogy, but we see it in a flashback here. Pfeiffer does a great job conveying this with her facial expressions when they re-enter the realm in this movie, as she's absolutely horrified to see what Kang has become. She knows she trapped him down there, but also knows she left him with his suit, and when she went into his memory, she saw what he can do with that. It's almost as if she's carrying a survivor's guilt on her shoulders the whole time. And before we get into the post-credit scene, let's break down the ending real quick. I think this movie should have ended with Scott and Hope's hug in Kang's Citadel with the portal reopening. I genuinely thought that was the end of the movie, and I was so happy with it. Kang ends on a cliffhanger, and so do our heroes. It leaves opportunity for them to get brought back in a later film. Maybe the portal doesn't fully open, and it closes before they can get back through. And then in a project like, I don't know, Fantastic Four, we see that team searching the quantum realm when Scott and Hope pop back up and warn them, whereas Reed, that would be our 616 Reed Richards, would already be aware and trying to get back to our Earth to warn the heroes of what's coming, much like Hulk did in Infinity War. I thought the scenes in San Francisco and the fake birthday dinner dampened the weight of the ending, but it's one of those things I'm going to have to see if there's a solid reason as to why they brought Scott and Hope back in a future project. Finally, the heart of the MCU. Getting back to the basics with these two post-credit scenes. Seeing the Council of Kangs is a comic book nerd's dream come true. And that scene alone is why you go get guys like Jeff Loveness and Michael Waldron who worked on Rick and Morty. Feige decided on Kang, looked to his idea people, and was like, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. This scene truly left me speechless though, from how amazing Majors looked as Rama Tut, Immortus, and the Scarlet Centurion, but even more, the variation from those who resembled He Who Remains to a full-on Skrull variant of Kang. That mid-credit scene will obviously tie into Avengers Kang Dynasty, but then the post-credit scene will also tie into a project, that being Loki Season 2. We see Victor Timely, who I don't believe appeared in the mid-credit scene, but correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong, giving a speech in the past as Loki and Mobius watch from the crowd, and that show can't come soon enough. But of course, I want to know what you thought about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania down in the comments below. Did you think it was as bad as the critics said it was, or did you enjoy this entry to the MCU? Make sure to leave your like on this video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more nerdy content like this, and have a great day.